He incarnated as a man to kill himself in a scapegoat ritual atonement sacrifice. This is just a preposterous, ancient, superstitious belief. There's no Adam and Eve Genesis story of any fruit tree curses and curses from Satan, and the idea of a scapegoat being required so that we can be with God in heaven.
So basically, he's making the argument, much like Nikki made the argument yesterday, that because, the laws of nature, right? Because in my experience, I don't see people being raised from the dead. I don't see miracles happen in front of me. Vis-a-vis, miracles can't happen, or they don't ever happen. And I think that's a little bit ridiculous. I and I also feel bad for these people because as Orthodox Christians, we actually see miracles happen all the time. When a person is taken from the depths and the pit of despair and death, when a person is literally self-destructive and at a point of being suicidal, when Christ can reach out to that person and lift them up, not just out of being in despair, not just being out of suicidal thoughts, but actually raise them up to a place of dignity and a place of love and a place of being a head of a family. This happens every day, literally every day. That is raising the dead. And it's a very short jump from that to God, if he's actually incarnated on earth in a human form, actually raising a dead person. I think actually seeing a person be transformed from some heroin addict who's next to death to being actually a good man with dignity. I think that's more amazing to see done. And so I think that a main thing too is that the lack of faith in people, it directly results in them not having any experience of divinity, not having any experience of miracles and of holiness. And it's really sad because it's like, I don't see it. It's like, yeah, I know that's why you don't see it. Because you're so arrogant, because you have so much hubris. Christ tells us that if you want to see him, you need humble faith. God responds to humble faith, humility and faith, and God will reach you. Without those two things, it's just not you're not going to see it. And so it's just a shame because there is a sincerity in most of these people. There is a sincerity. They want to know, like the girl yesterday, Nikki. I called into the Crucible, and I at first when I was in the waiting room for the call in, I had a joke. I was gonna call in and I was gonna troll and I was gonna make a joke, and then I was listening to her talk and I started to feel really bad, so I hopped out. I was like, I don't want to be a troll. She seems nice. And then I waited till I had an actual question and I called back in. But it's like, these people, it's like the whole materialist, secularist position where it's like, oh, that ball bounces. Let's cut it in half. Study every cell in the ball to figure out its bounce, to measure its bounce. They think that if you take, the sum of all these different parts, that you're going to get the totality of what the thing is. You know, God says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Fool. And that's really, we see that demonstrated in all of these online atheist debaters. That it really takes a fool to not be able to recognize the very obvious spiritual reality in being a human being, in the human experience. It's pretty obvious. There's meaning everywhere, there's meaning on every layer of reality in your life. You look at a pair of lungs, you can see meaning. You look down to cellular structures, there's design, there's order, there's meaning. But this idea that it's all just random, it's all just chaos, it's the dumbest position. And we've all had that position at one point or another. So it's not like, oh, we just don't get it. That's the thing that's so frustrating dealing with these Adam Green types. It's like, dude, it's not that like we've never heard this position before. It's that this was our position before we learned more. It's like you guys, you're total hubris to think that you're saying something that's actually new or brilliant or like, whoa, never thought of that one before, dude. It's like that's where I was when I was 12, bro. When I was 12. And this kind of factors into something I want to talk about in debating is that it's sort of this double-edged sword like that debate we saw tonight with JD, where you want to see smart atheists come on to debate, people who actually know how to do a debate. They know like the necessity of justification, things like that. But people who are smart enough to know that are also smart enough to know that, like, I might make myself look like a fool tonight. Or smart enough to know, like, I'm not as well spoken as this guy. I probably don't want to make a fool of myself. And so instead, we get the people who are too dumb to realize that they're going to be made a fool of, too dumb to realize maybe maybe I'm not prepared for this debate. You know what I mean? So those are the people we get to see come on and debate the atheists are always the ones that can't even form a coherent argument. People who are so unaware, unself-aware. And that's why I think we never see really good debaters on like YouTube debating for the atheist position. We do see a lot of great debaters in Discord and on Twitter who can actually put together a coherent argument. But most of those people are smart enough to not put their face out there and their name and really stand behind their position. That even when they seen it, they would still be disobedient.
Another problem, and I got about a minute left, I see. Another problem is Christianity did not start from a single source, but there were many proto Christian, Hellenistic, Jewish,
Oh, Mithras, he's going to talk about Mithras. Okay.
Gnostic mystery religions.
Yeah, not Gnostics, right. So because there were heretics, because there were apostates, because there were people who saw the rising Christian faith, who saw the power and the glory and the dignity of that, and who sought their own personal power by mimicking it and by trying to mislead others, equals Christianity not real. Okay.
Religion
Again,
sects.
brilliant.
They were evolving all over the place with different memes and common motifs. There were many separate and competing rival Christianities. So much for the divine authority and the handing the rock and starting the church and the unbroken chain of bishops and
So because Gnostics equals a broken chain, we have the unbroken chain. You can go you can go look at it, dude. Gnostics were not a part of our church because the church is an uncreated energy. See, this is something that again people outside of the church cannot grasp with their Wookiee brains, dude. The church is not a building. The church is not a brick and mortar. The church is an actual energy of God that exists amongst all of us who are in Christ. We are the church, not some building. So because of a heretic or because of a bishop that falls, falls off or is led astray or is in prelest, that doesn't destroy the church. That doesn't break the church. Our church has survived periods where some of the highest people were heretics, and the church still maintained throughout all of the faithful Christians. At no point in time was there no faithful Christians on the world since the start of the church. It's always existed and it's always maintained, and it's been promised to us that it would be maintained until the end of the earth. And that promise has been fulfilled, as has every other promise that Christ has made to us, like the promises of all the sacraments, which again are miracles that we experience every single Sunday. I add Darwish. All this just because someone wants to say they on the right belief or not. Well, actually, there's a lot more to this than just saying you're right. And people always assume whenever I'm discussing this in person with somebody who isn't a Christian, they always assume that it's like battle between who's right or not. As Christians, we readily acknowledge that we are wrong. What Jerry, believed was wrong. And when I realized it was wrong, and when I realized it wasn't serving me, and when I realized it was destroying me, I had to step back, reappraise my beliefs, which were much like Adam Green at one point, reappraise them, realize I was wrong, realize Christ was the truth, and then submit my will to Christ. And in doing that, not only did it help me in a pragmatic way, helped me spiritually, helped me mentally, helped me physically. So no, Jerry wasn't right. Now I am speaking from the position of an Orthodox Christian because Christ is right. So no, it's not just about saying I'm right because I wasn't right. What I wanted to do with my life, what I believed was the right thing to do was completely wrong.